So histology is the study of tissue. So basically, when you go to the hospital, if you have a surgery, they will take that tissue and it will come to the lab where I work, and that's how they're able to diagnose patients and figure out what treatments you need to get better. So I have a bachelor's in physiology. It took me 5 years because I changed my major a couple times, but so there's that, and then there's different routes to getting certified. So after that, my college degree, I worked in a lab for a year, and then they trained me in all of the areas, and then I studied on my own, and then you can take the test to get certified. So some people do it that way. Some people take specific histology associate degree programs, or you can even get a master's in it. They actually have at Drexel University has one of the first master's programs in histotechnology. So my daily work activities are we receive that tissue, we process it in chemicals so that we can prepare it for cutting and making slides. So once it's processed, they go into paraffin wax. Maybe you've been or seen a nail salon, you dip your hands in wax. It's a similar wax, you put the tissue in it, and it forms a block. And then you put the block on the machine and cut thin slices. And then the thin slices are put on slides. And the slides are then heated and stained with different colors so that different elements in the tissue will show up. And there's a doctor that's called a pathologist who looks at those slides, who makes the diagnosis. And after they look at the initial slides, then we have special requests for special stains, and there's something called immuno, and those will be other different colors of staining to bring out different elements in the tissue. There's also something we call frozens. When if a patient they're on the table and they're open, they'll have to rush and bring us samples to cut fast they freeze them instead of using paraffin. So, and usually you have to have that diagnosis within 15 minutes so that they can make a call and then they'll close the patient back up. So other related jobs to mine would be pathology assistant. They do the grossing, meaning they actually cut the tissue. Histotechs cut tissue as well, but not as much. And it also depends on your training. Then there's the pathologist, which is the doctor who looks at the slides. And then there's also med techs that they usually they're like general and they can do a lot of lab work. And there's cytotechs. They work usually with actually urine and blood and specimens that are harder to, that you don't have like tissue. So special skills that you need to work in histology would be, you want a science background, you want to have good math skills, analytical thinking, manual dexterity, and you want to be detail oriented. In order to enter the field, you can have anywhere from an associate's to a master's degree. And the certification is called HT-ASCP or HTL-ASCP. If you have an associate's, you can only get the HT, but if you have a bachelor's or master's, you can get HTL, which means really more money. So sometimes it's better to get that. What I like most about my job is that I'm helping people and also work with good people. And we have fun every day. It's interesting work. You get to see cool specimens come down. Sometimes you'll get like really abnormal specimens and tumors, which is sad for the patient, but it's really interesting to see just what the human body can do. It's a growing field, and there are great job prospects, in particular because a lot of people don't know about it. Because usually when you think, oh, I want to work in healthcare, you think doctor, nurse, but there's so many other jobs, and this is one of them, and doctors and nurses need lab workers. the thing I like least about histology is because we usually don't have enough people. Sometimes there's a lot of work. And in particular, if you work in a hospital that's in the major city like I do, it can be, you can be very busy. And so it's good if you have more help, which is why I said it's good job prospects. So we definitely need more people. And the salary range depends on where you live. So you can make anywhere from, I would say, $35,000 to $100,000. And research pays the least amount of money, but a lot of people enjoy that. You also could work in a private lab, a doctor's office, a hospital, or as a traveling histotech. That one actually pays the most of the time. Usually they'll give you a car, they'll pay your rent, and you get to go to different hospitals to work for like short amounts of time to fill in for people. And again, depending on where you live, if you live in the major city, you're gonna make more money because it just, I guess they add in cost of living, but on average, anywhere from, I would say, 35,000 to 100,000. Like I have a friend who's in California who makes 100,000, but you know, California is very expensive. But if you live in Michigan, where I'm originally from, you might make like 35 or 40. Usually the pathologist makes that call. Like you can, for example, if something is cancerous, it has a certain appearance and they're trained in that. I can kind of look at like QC it. For another example would be, there's a strain called H. pylori that people can get. It's a fungus, and you can look at it under the microscope and see little looks like black cylinders. So I'll know, oh, this is H. pylori positive. So I can do that much, like, so kind of things like that. But again, depending on the strain you're using, and the pathologist has the training to look for specific things. So let's say you had a heart transplant, and every year, like after you have a heart transplant, you have to go to the hospital and they take a sample. So they'll usually, I think they might use a laparoscope for that, or cut you open. They take a small sample with usually a needle that has a hole in it that sucks up a piece, and then they put it in a jar with a fluid called formalin that helps preserve the tissue in the state that it's in, and then they send it down, like someone walks it down to the lab. So that's where we get tissue. It's from patients who have surgery. So that is very, very bad. So usually if you're embedding something, each tissue sample comes in a little plastic box that we call a cassette, and it has holes in it so the chemicals can infiltrate through it, and you only open one at a time. You never ever open multiple. It's very dangerous because you can mix tissue, and it does happen. Sometimes you're lucky and it's totally different tissue, and the doctor can tell, like, hey, this is supposed to be liver, but it looks like a heart. Like things like that. So that, yeah, it's very, very, very bad. We do everything we can to avoid that. Every day is interesting. You see different things. One thing I always noticed is lungs, because lungs are supposed to be like a light pink and spongy, and so usually you can get lungs that are like person likely was a smoker, and you can see that it's black and has tumors in it and tar, and like you can tell, like, oh, this person's lungs is really bad because it's not what it's supposed to look like. Usually that one is the yeah, I'll say physiology, biology, chemistry are probably the main ones. Everything just related to the body.